When does the JWP team start getting involved when it comes to like a turnover?
It really starts from when the residents lets us know that they're going to be moving out. So from there, our team is using our software. Everything speaks to each other through Salesforce, but our property management team is going ahead and saying, okay, here's when the resident's lease is ending, or if they're moving out early for any reason, when the resident is going to be vacating the home. So then if the resident says, I'm going to be moving out on September 1st, then we are scheduling for the home to be taken possession of. So we have a team that is specializing in taking possession of the home. And really their big piece is, okay, I'm going to make sure that I go there. I'm changing the locks. I'm making sure that the home is secured. And I'm really doing a full photo report of how we received the property back from the resident.
Okay.
That's going to be most important for the intent to claim process for the resident security deposit is how did the resident return the home compared to how they received the home when they moved into the property?
Okay. So step one is showing up the day of their move out, making sure that they moved out.
Yep.
Changing the locks so there's no funny business after the fact, and then documentation so that everybody's on the same page of how this property was left, essentially. Right?
Exactly.
So the resident knows that they're not going to get hosed. The property owner has visibility into everything that's happening, and JWB is able to document all of this stuff, right?
Exactly.
And that would be something, if I was doing it myself, I would have to do that, right? Like that has to happen. All property management companies do this kind of thing, or people that do it themselves, or do people just kind of trust everybody to be as good at Move Out or as Alley King?
Ideally,
Yeah.
they're doing this. I can't say that everyone's changing locks, which comes with its own, I'm sure, issues there, but that's important for us. And then photos are going to be really important for just a whole liability process, making sure that we're doing everything right, and really to show to our investors of, hey, I'm writing a scope of work. I also want to show you what you're paying for. Not everything's going to show up in photos, but having something to match your scope of work for what you're going to be paying for is super helpful in having those conversations with clients that can't be here themselves to see it.
Got it. So first level of coordination is just making sure that they're leaving, and then coordinating with a locksmith or being a locksmith yourself in order to change something like that, right? That's first level of effort. Okay, so that happens. They've moved out. You've taken pictures. Everybody knows what the property looks like. There's new locks on the door. What's next?
So from there, that is then when we have a project manager and a scope writer, they are following the route of that possession team almost to a T. So they're saying, okay, here's the route of any homes that we're taking possession of today, tomorrow, within the next few days. And then we have a scope writer, a team of those with JWB, who they're going to be following that route so that we can get that scope of work over to the client almost immediately when we take possession. That's the goal, is to limit the amount of time that it takes from the resident to move out for us to know what's going to need to be done to get the home back in a rent ready condition.
What do you mean by following a route?
Yeah. So Jacksonville is large. We manage right around 5,500 homes right now. So if we have 50 move outs happening in the same week, they're going to be strategic about that to make sure that they are doing it as efficiently as possible versus just hopping around all over the city.
Got it. I imagine most people move out around the first week of the month. Right?
Yeah.
So pictures are taken, scope writer walks in, and is it a home inspection, but with a different skill set? Like somebody's going in to see the status of the home, to then understand what needs to be improved, and then create a report that reflects the improvements that are needed to meet a specific standard that JWB already has predetermined?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
You're nailing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
next.
So they're walking through there. They're going to walk through the home and they're going to identify what needs to happen to the home to get it in a rent ready condition. There will be some areas where they will factor in and budget for contingency items. So say plumbing just isn't working. If they are not necessarily the plumber, they're going to kind of use their expertise and their experience of doing this for years over so many homes to say, I know that it's probably this issue. I will let the professional determine that, but I'm going to go ahead and write in a cost code for that so that the client is budgeting properly for it on the front end.
Does this person have a checklist of things that they need to check and a checklist of things that the property needs to end up having, kind of thing? Is that what it looks like?
They do. So we have a normal livability standard, which is going to say, this is what the home needs to have done to it to make sure that it's livable. So do I have working heat and air? Do I have lighting? Do I have plumbing? Is everything up to code as far as a safety standard goes? And then we're going to also make sure that the home is somewhere that you would want to live and that you have renters who are going to want to live there too.
Mhm.
That's exactly what they're doing. So they're going through and saying, okay, here is everything that needs to be done to the home for us to be able to release it back on the market for a new resident to move in and for it to be rent ready for them to be able to move into right away.
Okay, cool. So you have a professional scope writer. They are like one part home inspector, one part like proposal writer. Right?
Exactly.
So
Yep.
it's a unique skill set, which I think is interesting to have in the house. They write the scope that day. What happens next?
So from there is when it's going to be imported in. So it's really helpful working with us because we're going to have a lot of fixed line item pricing. So we know how much your paint's going to be. And that's going to be calculated based off of square footage for what painting is, or flooring, or carpet, or pest control, cleanings, anything like that. So they're going to go ahead and do that, write the scope, say, hey, here's everything that needs to be done. That is then imported into our same software to then your portfolio manager gives you a call as a client and says, hey, I just sent you over the photo report of here is the condition that we received the home back from the resident. I want you to pull that up. I also just sent you over the estimated scope of work. I want you to pull that up. We're now going to walk line by line through every single item on there. Make sure that you're super comfortable with what it is. We want you to know what you're paying for and the transparency. And then from there, we're going to address any questions live on the phone. And then as soon as we have your approval and contribution on it, then we can get the project started right away. Also, another thing to add is we have stuff in place that is normally resident responsibility that we go ahead and take care of when it goes vacant. So you think utilities are normally in a resident's name. We go ahead and make sure that those are set up to fall into our landlord account so that the home isn't ever without power. It's really hard to write a scope if you don't have power in there, plumbing, working, everything there. We are going to go ahead and get it set up on a mowing rotation. Grass grows very fast here in Florida, and the city is happy to violate you for tall grass if it's out of order. So we go ahead and have that set up, and then we have cleaning set up as well.
Okay. And then,
so the scope is approved. So we're going to go ahead and present the scope over to you as a client. You approve it. Then that's when our team, we then will have a project manager who's going to oversee all of the vendor coordination. Their goal is to make sure we are getting quality work done and then keeping the amount of time that the home is vacant to a minimal. So right now our average for turnover. So from the time that I have your approval to the time that turnover is completely done and it is on the market, ready to be rented, is at 11 days.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it moves pretty quick. Normally that's how long it takes to get one vendor in and out of there. But our project managers, they're there to pretty much just oversee the project, manage the project. But that's really what they're specializing in, is arranging the timeline, saying, okay, I can't do flooring before I do painting, and thinking of all of the order of operations. And they've got that down. So they know that they're doing it in the most efficient order to get it done quickly and to not have to work backwards and do work more than once.
So your project managers are like mini general contractors.
Exactly. Yeah.
Talk to me about like a typical scope.
Some things that are going to be on every scope of work is going to be things that you think of how you want a new resident to receive the home. So some items are going to be cleaning. The home's always going to be cleaned. We will always do an HVAC inspection, and we will always do pest control.
Okay.
Those are going to be really important items because we want to make sure that when we are having a new resident move in, that we say, hey, we checked all of these items. So if you have a resident who has been in there for 6 months and now there's an HVAC issue and it is directly correlated to not changing your filter or not clearing your drain line. If I didn't do an inspection before you moved in, there's no way for me to say that that was your cause. That could have been the resident prior. So a lot of it is getting a clean bill of health for the home for the new resident to move in. And then really anything else is just going to be, does everything work? Do all of your switches on your appliances work? Is your refrigerator running properly? Is all of your plumbing working? And then really just does everything look good? Am I going to try to rent this home to you while there are holes everywhere in the wall? That means that you can then return the home to me with holes in the wall. So I really want to provide a new resident a product that they're going to want to live in, and also provide it back to me, knowing that they're going to be taking care of the home.
Do most houses get interior paint job? Like, are you going in and painting it?
Yeah, so painting is going to be really popular now. Within the past couple of years, we actually upgraded our paint to a new product. It's called a super paint. So what that is to where a lot of it's almost washable paint, to where if there was something on the wall, a scuff that previously or a different product, you would have to paint over it 100% of the time, we can clean it off. So that's been a really huge upgrade for us, and a product that's newer to us that has a little bit more cost up front, but when you look at it over a long period of time, it saves you a lot of money.
So then 11 days from move out until making it all look really nice. Does that sometimes go further? Like if there's like extra holes in the wall or things like that?
Internally, that's going to be pretty much it. Sometimes if it's going to be externally, it's going to be pest can be a big one. So if there's fleas, you can legally only treat fleas every certain amount of days. So that can say, okay, I need to wait a certain amount of days before my team is even getting in there, because your vendors aren't going to go into a flea infested home to start painting. They're going to need to make sure that piece is cleaned first. But everything else, sometimes if it's permitting, that can slow it down a little bit. But that 11 days it's an average that we've had for a long time. And it's something that we're going to just continue working to get down, but
Okay.
that's pretty standard.
Talk me through the rest of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, and that's 11 days from when the client approves it. Something to take into consideration too. If we are going and we're doing a turnover on average every 4 years for a resident, sometimes you're going to run into situations where they do renew for years and years. And now you're doing a turnover for a resident who's been in the home for 12 years. That can look a little bit different. You're just going to have more normal wear and tear, which also means there's stuff that you're not going to be able to claim from the resident security deposit, because that is just natural for someone that has occupied a home for that long.
Got it. Is it normal to take out of the renter's security deposit, or do they generally walk away with their own security deposit?
Yeah, so we have a specialist for that too,
Okay.
who they specialize in the the process is an intent to claim against a resident security deposit. So if you were to do a turn on your own, that's something that you'd want to seek legal counsel for, because there's different timelines with Florida statute of how long you have to create it. You have to have confirmed receipts before you're making an intent to claim. You have to allow the resident a certain amount of time to dispute items, but it's a whole process that's included with your JWB service to be able to handle the intent to claim process for you. But what is happening on that end is you have your specialist internally here. They are taking a move-in report, so the house right before the resident moved in. They are comparing that to the photo report of how we received the home from the resident. They are then taking that same scope of work that the client approved. They're going line by line and saying, okay, what's normal wear and tear for how long the resident's been in there? What is above normal wear and tear? And then what is actually direct resident neglect? And then they are taking what the client paid for it, and then they're mailing that out to the resident. And then they have a certain amount of time to dispute any items.
Got it.
And then they're going from there. And then that's when funds from the security deposit can be reimbursed back to the client for repairs that they paid for.
Okay. Where are we now?
So from here, now is when you're going to have if we're on the final day, that project manager is saying, hey, my project's good to go. We then have a quality control coordinator who's going to go to the property, and they're really walking it and saying, okay, I have this scope of work. Is this client getting what they paid for? And they have their whole checklist and they're going through that. That's also the opportunity for them to say, is there something that we didn't put on the scope of work that we still need to get done now?
Okay.
That doesn't really happen, but that's what they're there for, is to find items. They're almost like your home inspector who's looking for stuff to be wrong. That's almost what they're looking for. So, okay, what is the scope of work approved? Let me make sure that all of these boxes are checked. If they are all checked properly, then that is when we're going to go ahead and release the home to market.
Okay. What happens next?
Yeah. So from there, if there was something that wasn't checked off, they're going to immediately get with their project manager, who that kind of high prioritizes that vendor, if they didn't do the work, to get out there right away to make sure that everything is done properly. If it's good to go, which in majority of the cases is going to be good to go, then that's when we are releasing the home to market. So an email goes out. The portfolio management team is letting the client know, hey, great news, your home's officially released to market. Then our photography team is getting out there. They're going to be creating the 3D tour.
Okay.
Which then that's kind of our after photos for the client to say, you got your possession photos to see what the home looked like originally. You paid for the scope of work, and then now you have this 3D tour of your property afterwards.
That serves as like I got what I want. And it's also my marketing to go get a new resident. As
Exactly. Yep. It's your marketing. And then that's what's going to automatically then hit the market and get the ground running. So when it's released, we are putting that sign in the yard that says it's ready for rent, and then it's going on the market immediately from there.
And once that happens, you're done?
Well, then from there, we'll continue talking to the client to give them rental updates regularly until we do have a deposit on the home. So it's not a sit and don't hear anything from anyone and just wondering if it's rented. We're going to keep you in the loop of, here's how many inquiries we got on the home. Here, we also have an available homes team. They're going to go out and check on the home while it's vacant to see if there are any items that maybe are more cosmetics. Maybe it's not anything that would have impacted rentability on the front end, but maybe the home is sat for a little bit and it's something we could do to spruce it up. And that's another separate person, another set of eyes on the property who is looking at it differently.
When you use the term turn,
Yeah.
is that contained in like the remodeling and what needs to go into the property?
Yeah, so the turnover for me is the actual project
Is the
time.
project.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
from when we write a scope to when it is released to the market,
Got
that's the turnover
Got
for
it.
me.
And then that's when you're thinking about like all these different moving parts, then it becomes something else. Then it
Yep.
becomes like a marketing and like a showpiece.
Yep. Then from there, you're gonna have it marketed, and then you'll have a deposit. Eventually, a resident will place a deposit on the home, and then they'll move into the home.
That was a super detailed process. Thank you for that.